Good afternoon, and welcome back to College Football on Tap, brought to you by On Tap Sportsnet. Chris White joined alongside Bruno Oger on this very weird Tuesday instead of a Monday. Bruno, how you doing?
I'm good. Just a little tired. Woke up a little bit earlier than I normally would for my night shift at work to do this today, and last night was a little bit longer than I would have liked. So, uh, trying to catch my bearings, but wanted to make sure we got something out there this week for you all. So maybe a little bit shorter of a show, but something that we wanted to make sure that we still gave you some content and didn't want to overload you with like a 2 hour plus show on a Friday that could get kind of tedious. So
Right. I agree with that. I know I had a little bit of family, we'll call it a kerfuffle yesterday. So between that and my work schedule and Bruno's work schedule, we just couldn't swing it. But here we are. And we had a pretty fun weekend Saturday. It
yeah,
it was a little rough at times for us Notre Dame fans, but all in all, it was a fun Saturday of football.
yeah. There was I pretty much sat on the couch. I didn't do anything the whole day. I had three games on almost the whole entire time. So I got a lot of games in and was able to pay attention to quite a lot throughout the day. Um, when it came down to a Notre Dame game at night, that got my main attention as usual. It was great to see that the Irish ended up pulling out the win, but it definitely wasn't an easy one for them. This fly really loves me. Um, but yeah, it was not an easy win for Notre Dame this week against Duke, who didn't expect it to be, but came down to the last minutes just like the week previous. This time, a big fourth down play by Sam Hartman and then a 30-yard touchdown run by Audric Estime got Notre Dame to win late in the final minute of the game, which was great to see. Good for them. Duke, hell of an effort. I really hope that Riley Leonard, who got hurt at the end of the game for Duke, is okay. But Duke at the end of the day wasn't able to pull off the win as Notre Dame won their 30th straight game against the ACC this week.
Yeah, it was a nice little change of pace because the run game wasn't working out for them too well in back-to-back weeks. But Hartman using his legs on that fourth down and Estime ripping that final run off probably could have went down on the one, but I mean, shit, I was happy. I didn't really care at that point.
Yeah,
What bugged me the most was that punt down on the one. Then they turned it over and then later said, well, shit, sorry, we're not supposed to do that, but too late now.
yeah. Kind of an interesting little speck of the game there. But yeah, honestly, it was a very defensive battle between both teams. Notre Dame, I said last week that Audric Estime was going to run all over them and that was going to be the difference maker. It kind of ended up being the difference maker at the end, but Audric Estime wasn't running the ball that well. Duke was doing a good job of holding him too. I mean, he did have two touchdowns. He had the early touchdown in the game for Notre Dame, but it he was mainly getting maybe 1 to 2 yard carries, wasn't really running the ball well. So it was scary for a while. I didn't know if Notre Dame was going to end up pulling the game out because they weren't able to get the running game going for a while. And then with Duke having the late lead, I kind of was just trying to sit there and laugh at it and not get upset like I was the week prior. And Notre Dame ended up making it okay. Good to see. Great game in general. Got nothing negative to say about Duke. I hope they continue to have a great season in the ACC, have a shot at winning it
Yeah, no, I mean,
this
Duke
year.
looks awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the status of Riley Leonard if that's been updated yet. He rolled his ankle at the end. We saw a nice little gesture by Sam Hartman,
Yeah,
who
checking out,
instead of
sitting outside of his tent for a few minutes, waiting to make sure he's all right.
instead of going to the locker room and celebrating the win, he was a class act and made sure that Riley was okay. He didn't want to see the other team's quarterback hurt. I'm sure he has quite a history being at Wake Forest with them as well. So class act by Sam Hartman, kind of a big reason why Notre Dame says they are Notre Dame. Notre Dame has the punches keep coming. Next week they play another undefeated team. who sneaks into the top 25 this week in Louisville. And then they got USC following that. So Notre Dame's continuing to have a tough schedule. It's going to be interesting to see how they play against Louisville. I don't expect Louisville to be as tough of a challenge as Duke for Notre Dame, but who knows?
Yeah, Duke really surprised me. They're a hell of a team. Riley Leonard's a hell of a quarterback. I mean, I'm glad to see he obviously went off on crutches, but that is 10 times better than a stretcher. That injury looked nasty. That I wasn't sure what exactly happened because his foot kind of went in a direction you don't like feet going in.
Yeah.
But no, I mean the blue basketball schools are keeping it up. I think 4 are still undefeated.
Yeah.
Duke and Kansas with losses this week, but
North Carolina and Kentucky still undefeated.
Yeah. So
and Kentucky will be tested next week, so we'll see. We'll kind of get into that when we recap the top 25 there for a moment. But I don't really have much else to go with off of the Notre Dame game. I'm glad that they ended up pulling out the win, and it continues to be an interesting season for the Irish and Marcus Freeman as he continues to grow as the head coach of this team.
Right. Let's move it back in time, roughly 24 hours. What happened to Utah, man? We were praising their special teams, their defense. We knew offense was a bit rocky, but even being at Oregon State, I did not see that outcome coming. I know I boosted something on DraftKings for Utah's money line, and I ate that one hard.
Yeah, I honestly expected it to be a much better game from Utah. I knew that their offense was struggling without Cameron Rising, and it continued to be the case. And now it's pretty much just to a point where, Utah with this loss, it's a big loss for them, especially being inside the Pac-12 this year. Very tough, competitive, quarterback savvy,
Very, very quarterback heavy.
It's without Cameron Rising, this team just doesn't have an offense that can score, and it ended up being their downfall this week, which, I thought it could happen, and it really showed out. They were they were in the game, but they didn't have a shot at the game, it seemed like the whole way. It just seemed like Oregon State was going to win no matter what Utah tried to do. They needed to pull some tricks out of the bag. No, Cameron Rising not being there for this team is really letting down their season pretty much. I think Utah,
especially when the week before last, they were talking about game time decision on College Game Day, and now it's just continuing to prolong. So, when's the teasing going to end? Are we going to see him? Are we not going to see him? Can they can't afford another loss. They have to be perfect from here on out for even a New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah,
you need Cam Rising back bad.
I don't see them beating a lot of these Pac-12 schools without them.
Washington, USC, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, you got to put up points, and that's something that they're struggling to do. Their defense got them by for a few weeks, but it's not going to continue to get them through. I mean, they can play close games, but, if you're putting up 7 at the end of the day and they're putting up 20, that's all it takes. And that's where it's going to be for a while if they don't have any quarterback play that's halfway decent. And right now, Nate Johnson, not really the best option for him. Cam Rising's either they got to kind of say he's going to play this week, or, the season's going to be over fairly quickly. There's going to be no Pac-12 title of the game. There's going to be no opportunity for them to go to a New Year's Six bowl. I don't know if they're in the college football playoff conversation anymore with a loss like this. I know that
I don't think so. There's a bunch of one-loss teams that I think will have an edge on them when the committee decides that.
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to go with the SEC over any conference every year. So
yeah,
there's a one-loss team in the SEC. That's really going to end up costing Utah and at the end of the day. And I mean, there is one less one-loss team in the SEC this week that was a national championship contender in LSU. So there's some good news for everyone.
We love to see Brian Kelly struggle. And I'm going to say it again. I am not petty, but I am loving his lack of winning down in Louisiana. I mean, he left Notre Dame, which is understandable. He was here 10, 12, 13 seasons, something like that. He was having trouble recruiting. He goes to SEC country. Marcus Freeman comes here, is out-winning him. He is out-recruiting him. It's I don't know. It's just a little bittersweet for me. I'm enjoying it. I ain't gonna hold back. It's fine. Ole Miss, let's go, Rebels.
Yeah. Ole Miss, LSU, the offensive game of the week. There was absolutely no defense being played. I kind of sat there
like a 55-49 or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. All it took was one drive for LSU not to score, and that was it for Ole Miss, because Ole Miss couldn't not score. It got to the point LSU had the advantage there for a while, and I kind of started to think late in the third quarter, whoever has the ball last in this game is going to win it. Ole Miss had the ball last to score, and that was it. I mean, Ole Miss was just in general lights out on offense. LSU has no defense whatsoever, which, not typically what we're used to seeing in the SEC in general. We're used to seeing hard-nosed football where two teams are going back and forth playing good defense, 27-24 games, 31-28 games, definitely not 55-49. We know
that is out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's LSU did everything they can offensively, but it just wasn't enough. And I mean, I was sitting there thinking, man, Brian Kelly might get ran out of LSU a lot faster than we thought. I mean, now you're talking, if LSU loses one more this year, people are going to really be feeding on.
They won't even enter next year in the top 25.
I think if LSU doesn't end up being, if LSU loses 2 games next season, I think Brian Kelly's stint there is going to be 3 years and done.
They got rid of Coach O after a national championship and only a bad season and a half, something like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't take much.
They don't accept it at LSU. They figured with the way Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame, where it was pretty much 10-2 season after 10-2 season, it seemed like that LSU would give them that edge in terms of recruiting and everything.
You get those couple extra pieces. 10-2 turns into 11-1, 12-0.
Yeah, and now so far Brian Kelly is not showing up in the SEC, not showing them how to win games in the SEC, and it's still not even. It's almost the halfway point of the season. He got 2 losses, and he's still got to go play Alabama and some of these other schools. I mean, I see it. LSU could end up having 4 losses, 5 losses on their schedule at the end of the year. So it's really.
I would lose little sleep over 7-5, 8-4.
Yeah. He's going to have to Brian Kelly's going to have to get these guys to buy in for the rest of the season, say that there's something to play for, even if there might not really be. I guess he could still win the SEC, but
it'll be tough, but it won't be impossible. But while we're on the SEC subject, Kentucky, man.
Yeah, so Kentucky played Florida this week in an absolute blowout. It was just Kentucky the whole entire game, from beginning to end.
Florida looked totally different. Night and day.
Yeah, Florida looked like they were putting it together over the last couple of weeks after their week 1 loss, and then they just didn't show up to play against Kentucky at Kentucky, a rivalry game at that, and the basketball school ended up getting the big victory, and Kentucky's getting ready to go play Georgia this week. An undefeated Kentucky team versus an undefeated Georgia team, and it's going to be interesting to see what Kentucky can do if they can actually go out there and compete with Georgia, let alone win the game, because I don't know if Georgia, I mean, if you look at the title of the show, is there a true number 1? Is Georgia a true number 1 despite not losing in 600 and something days?
That's I was kind of going through some notes before we started, and I'm like, man, 2 1-score losses, or maybe South Carolina was a 2-score loss, maybe it was 10, but South Carolina, Auburn. I mean, if it wasn't for Brock Bowers, I mean,
Yeah.
what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a really good defense that can't move the ball without a number one tight end?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it seems like. I mean, Brock Bowers was pretty absent from the game this week against Auburn until the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden he ended up with like 100 and something yards receiving, running through people, just doing what Brock Bowers we're used to seeing him do over the last couple of years for Georgia. But honestly, if it wasn't for Bowers and his ability at tight end right now, I don't think we're talking about Georgia even being number one anymore in the rankings. No. I don't think Georgia wins the game. They just don't seem to have the talent on offense to really put teams away. They have enough to stay in games because the defense is so good, but you get one juggernaut of a team that goes out there and plays a really good offense. I don't know if they could keep up.
Yeah, and I know we were kind of talking about it on Friday that I was rolling through their schedule kind of quick, and I was sitting there thinking, like, I really don't think there's a team on this schedule that can beat Georgia. But, I mean, it's kind of like maybe they were having an off day. I could be wrong, but I mean, the game plan's right there in front of you. You keep two guys on Bowers, he'll get open, maybe still get 60, 70, 80 yards. But that's your whole game plan right there.
Yeah, I don't really see anything else. I was able to watch that whole game, and the running game's not great. I mean, they're not running the ball very well. They're okay at it. They're just not really doing anything great on the offensive side of the ball, and they're staying in games because of defense. But you also have to think Auburn is very inept on offense. So Auburn being up in this game and looking like they had even the ability to move the ball a little bit, like that was different. I didn't expect to see that. I thought Georgia comes out there and rolls Auburn just because Auburn is so inept on offense. And nonetheless, Auburn looked like the team that was going to win the game up until the fourth quarter again. So I don't know. I don't know if they're ready for Kentucky. Honestly, Kentucky's a better offense. They move the ball, they score, they got playmakers all over the field. It's going to be a tough game for Georgia this week, and this might be their toughest matchup for the rest of the year. I know I've seen it many years in the past where Kentucky's literally been this 5-0 team, and then they end up having to go play these Georgias and Alabamas, and they
end up 8-4, 7-5.
Yeah, so hopefully that's not the case for them this week. They go out there and compete and make it a fun, interesting game for people to watch at the very least. But I see that the spread is like 16 right now. I mean, I don't know how you could take Georgia on the spread even right now. So you probably get a preview of me taking Kentucky. Not that my picks have been great lately, but I'll probably take Kentucky this week just because 16 points seems like a lot for Georgia.
Personally, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't know where that game is at. Is it at Georgia?
Yeah, it's at Georgia.
Okay, because I believe Florida went to Kentucky this past week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that'll be covered more on Friday when we kind of get into betting a little more, but that's an early guarantee from me. I'm going to take 16. I'm probably going to put it in soon because I imagine it's going to move a little bit. But
yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to jump on that early just so the number doesn't go down because, you can see Georgia end up going out there and pulling away late. That seems to be their deal of what they do, but we'll see. I mean, this could be their toughest matchup. So it's definitely a game to watch. And I mean, I think if Georgia loses one game, you got to take them out of the college football playoff conversation just because of the schedule that they are playing. So
yeah, they really don't play anyone this year. I think besides for Kentucky, I think they have Tennessee left, and who even knows if they'll be ranked by the time they get there.
Florida beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago, so it's just who knows.
Kind of jumping around conferences here. What happened with Kansas, man? They
I mean, you got Well, they lost their starting quarterback minutes before the game.
Uh-huh.
And that's what you got to chalk it up to. They didn't have Daniels out there. I think that it's a different game. And I think Kansas would have been winning that game for a long time if Daniels was playing. Kansas was in the game still for a long time until late. And then it just became too much Quinn Ewers and Texas offense for Kansas to keep up. But Kansas would have been winning that game if Daniels was playing. I think we would have been sitting here. We probably would have been sitting here saying Kansas wins that game if Daniels played. I'm willing to sit there and say that just because he's such a different dynamic quarterback than what they had out there. He's really had this team going. And for it to be a last-minute switch like that, no one saw it coming. I don't even recall what the injury was or the reason why he didn't play. But, yeah, he's a very good talent. I mean, he's going to be up there in terms of NFL talk and everything. It's just unfortunate he wasn't able to play because it could have been a really huge victory for Kansas if he did.
Classic showdown.
Yeah, they were they were there. They were in that game even without him.
I know last year, obviously, totally different year, totally different situation. I remember Texas just absolutely smoking Kansas.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was during Quinn Ewers' time off for his injury. I can't remember. I think he got a shoulder injury.
Yeah,
earlier in the season.
I don't know the timing of it in comparison to when they played Kansas last year.
But obviously they had Bijan. It's a totally different story. But I was talking to a guy at work about it, and we were like, maybe they have a shot, maybe they don't. And the more I was reading into it, and I was like, I really don't think Texas gives this one up. And then you were starting to turn me into a believer, and then we got that ball dropped on us minutes before the game.
Yeah,
But,
I honestly
that's a heartbreaker for the school. I mean,
yeah, I honestly think if Daniels plays, we're talking completely differently about it. I mean, there was a lot of opportunity this past week for upsets. There was a lot of close games where you didn't expect them. It's just kind of why I'm sitting there thinking, is there a true number one out there? Because I mean, you could make an argument for Texas at this point as being the number one team in the nation. And
yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
You
I
could
just
make that
don't
argument
know
for a handful
anything.
of different teams, to be honest. But obviously, we're going to have to play a little more football. All of these teams cannot stay undefeated forever. Obviously, your Ohio State's going to have to play Penn State, going to have to play Michigan. That's going to get broken up in there. But USC,
Yeah.
What the hell happened there? 6 touchdowns and still a one-score game?
Yeah, so USC was dominating this game. They were up big. I mean, at one point they were covering a 21.5-point spread. And then it just seemed like USC's defense that we've talked so much about and how it just doesn't seem like it's
your classic Pac-12 defense.
There. And and they were just awful. They were awful on defense. Shadir Sanders started to lead Colorado downfield at will. It honestly, if there was another 5 minutes in that game, I think Colorado wins. 2 minutes. I mean, Colorado was actually making plays on defense late in the game where there was absolutely no USC defense to be found whatsoever in the late third and all the fourth quarter. I mean, people in Colorado are like, "Oh my God, it's getting close." The only thing that wasn't on their side was time. Because
I'm not so sure that Colorado lost more than they just ran out of time.
Yeah, because they were the better team in the whole second half. And even with Caleb Williams, like he had a great game, 6 touchdowns. He looked like the Heisman. I think he jumped Michael Penix Jr. again in terms of the Heisman race, just because I don't even think Penix threw for a touchdown this week.
Very, very close game against Arizona.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, 6 touchdowns, that's unreal. The dude's playing on a different level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he seems to be the clear-cut number one for next year's NFL draft. Chicago Bears. I mean,
you just want to destroy another quarterback, or what's on your mind?
Well, you know, being a Bears fan, it's like, wow, there's 2 schools that I hate: Ohio State and USC. So we already have one quarterback that's from Ohio State that probably isn't going to be the quarterback long term. Might as well go get the USC one and then make him not the quarterback long term.
You're out here to destroy careers of schools you hate.
Yeah, that'll be the thing for the Bears. Like, well, they might have tortured you during the college days, but guess what? We'll ruin them now.
Yeah,
make you even more tortured by them.
you're out here playing the long game. You're playing chess. Everyone else is playing checkers.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, any way to hurt me. But
while we're still kind of on the USC game, Dion is hopeful for a Travis Hunter return after their bye week, which would make Hunter return for UCLA on the 28th later this month. That's a week earlier than expected. Hopeful is a key word. Obviously, Dion wants him out there. Obviously, Hunter wants to be out there. We all want to see him out there, but that would make for something kind of pushing towards the end of the year. The 28th, that'll be what, week 9, week 8?
Yes. As Colorado continues to grow, obviously Travis Hunter is a big part of that going forward for this year and next year. So he's a big player to get back on the field. We had Heisman bets on him that are obviously now ruined due to the injury, but he's got an opportunity to come back and help this team win some games. I think the goal right now for Colorado is to make a bowl game, and then
absolutely.
And then next season, Colorado is going to have all the hype around them once again. So
going to keep reeling in commits.
Yeah, so I think seeing Travis Hunter back on the field is going to be a good thing for a lot of people. I think it's going to be a good thing to keep the brand up for Colorado and continue to have people watching them in some way. A lot of that Dion's hype and those ratings are probably going to fall off quite a bit right now just because they have lost 2 in a row. They aren't this super magnificent team that's going to go undefeated like all these people thought at the beginning of the year. When they started off with the win against TCU and whoever the heck else they played besides Colorado State. I mean, it's just going to be interesting to watch them continue to grow. I'm not rooting against them, but I did say they were going to go 7-5, 8-4 when everybody was on their hype train. I still believe that's the case right now, but
yeah, I think that's absolutely doable.
Yeah, I think they showed something on Saturday, so who knows? They can possibly win out, maybe lose one more game even. They're just an interesting team in general. But Dion really coaching to the end. I was more impressed by that than anything with how the game ended up going this week because they were so out of it. They just were dead in the water. I mean, USC looked like they were going to drop 63, 70 points on them. And then it ended up being a 48-41 game. Colorado, just like we said, needed 5 more minutes, and I think Colorado ties it up and possibly wins the game in overtime. So,
I know I've said it before, but anything better than Vegas's 3.5 or whatever it was, I mean that's an absolute win for that team. If they could go 500, let alone 7-5, 8-4, that's fantastic. And I'm no longer on my hater train. I am hoping them well. I'm having a lot of fun watching them. I got a lot of respect for Dion. But with Travis Hunter returning even a week early, I mean, you got to remember, he's a sophomore in a season I wouldn't say doesn't matter because every game obviously does. But you're not going to a playoff. You're probably – no, you're not going to New Year's Six Bowl. I mean –
yeah, no, that's not happening. I mean, they might try and get as close to New Year's Day as possible so more people are watching.
Yeah.
They know that they'll get ratings with them, but they're not New Year's 16.
No, even if they win out, it's too late now, 2 losses. But yeah, I'm ready for Hunter to get back. I would love to see what he's going to do against Oregon and USC, maybe still playing both sides of the ball next season as a junior. And you got to imagine – unless Dion's got some kind of stranglehold on him, he's going to go to the draft as a junior.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Dion seems to be more on the side of the players and doing what's right by them than doing what's right by himself.
No, absolutely. He seems like a player's coach, but I feel like players also can relate because I mean you see a lot of coaches, obviously a lot of former players, not so many with careers as great as Dion, and you gotta account for what he's telling them. Obviously, what he thinks is best, and I don't think he'll sugarcoat something like, you know, stay here one more year and you can make a hell of a lot more money next year, type of thing.
Yeah, no,
But a guy like Travis Hunter, he should have no issues getting a first round, probably top 10, 15.
Yeah.
Especially if he goes in as a DB, which I think will probably be the case, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, he's been outstanding at wide receiver as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Travis Hunter going forward. But yeah, probably more on the defensive side of the ball, maybe a special teams guy, maybe a return man. But that's all just speculation. So
yeah. But why don't we jump into the top 25 now? Obviously, nothing in the top 5 or top 7, I should say, have changed. We still are looking at Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Ohio State, Florida State, Penn State, Washington. And then Oregon and USC flip-flopped in 8 and 9.
And I mean, I think that's expected. Honestly, Washington had a really close game this week. We mentioned they won 31-24 against an Arizona team that at the beginning of the year wasn't thought to be that impressive, but they're 3-2, a lot better than expected. And they kept it close with Washington. We mentioned that Michael Penix Jr. didn't throw any touchdowns this week. Not that that's the end-all be-all in terms of winning football games and being a good quarterback and whatnot. Like, they moved the ball downfield. They scored 31 points, kind of a lower number than what you're used to seeing from Washington as well. But 31-24 final. Washington gets to hold their spot. I think a lot of people are on the hype train with Washington still saying they're a top 4 team. I think that they're a top 4 team, and maybe they played down a little bit to Arizona, wasn't as prepared as they should be, which, good teams got to be ready for everybody. But we'll continue to see how they progress throughout the year. But interesting to see that USC drops, Washington stays in place when they both kind of had similar matchups where they thought where they were going to go out there and win by a lot more, and the games were kept a lot closer than they were expected to be.
You got to imagine that is strictly off of defense alone. I think Arizona put up, I'm not sure, 21 or 24 or 4. Yeah, okay. And USC obviously almost, over 50. So
yeah, and then
that's strictly a Oregon decision. I don't hate it.
Oregon played Colorado way better than USC did. I don't think USC is a college football playoff team. I honestly don't think they're better than Notre Dame as long as Notre Dame tackles in the open field. That's the eye test that I see. Caleb Williams obviously
you keep a spy on Caleb Williams all game. Take away the run threat.
Yeah, he's a different animal, but the defense can't hold anybody. I mean, if they can't hold anybody, then how are you going to beat good schools when they come and play you? So I know that they're going to have, they have Notre Dame, not this week, but the following week. They're going to have Oregon. They're going to have these other teams that just seem to be a lot better than they are. And USC is going to have to go out there and prove themselves against Notre Dame to start if they're going to end up being in a college football playoff conversation. But, one loss and they're out with this defense. So it's just they're not they're a great offensive team. They could win games just based off of offense, but that defense is just bad. And then, right behind USC right now to keep that interesting is Notre Dame. Notre Dame moving back into the top 10 this week after the win at Duke. And that's all just because Utah lost, so Utah dropped quite a bit. And you'll kind of see there's a string of teams that end up moving up one spot. Alabama is now number 11. Oklahoma is number 12. Oklahoma versus Texas this week.
I hear the SEC commissioner is going to be
that we highlight. Yeah, I would think
he's got one of them. I'm not making a joke. Like, I read an article, like he has a suite to watch that game.
I know. All right. But yeah, it's Oklahoma, Texas, Red River rivalry. Always a fun one to watch. it'll be a big one this week for Texas. I think Texas handles them. And this also could be the game where it's just like, okay, Oklahoma's not just there anymore. Oklahoma's a legit team.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get it. We'll get our true look at what Oklahoma is this week with Texas. That's for sure.
Washington State up 3 spots. Carolina 1, Oregon State 4, Ole Miss 4, and Miami 1. Obviously, Duke goes down, Utah goes down, LSU all the way down to 23. So that makes quite a bit of room. Without Cam Rising, is Utah even an 18 seed?
I think that it's holding its place there right now just because they did win the games that they did win. They weren't easy games. They have had a tough schedule. So they won strictly on defense and special teams. It's just that it finally got to a point where they didn't. And if Cam Rising plays this week, I think you start thinking Utah might have a good shot at going 11-1 if he's healthy and playing to the ability that we've seen him play in the past. So
get back to his old stuff.
You got to leave him in there at this point. I don't know if they're better than Duke at this point, but
well, that's what I was kind of looking at. Like I believe Ole Miss at 16 is a better team than Utah, but I don't think they're better than Duke, and I don't think Oregon State is better than any of the 3, even though they beat Utah and they're ranked higher.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's all dependent on injuries and things like that. You can't really speculate just based on that. You can speculate, but you can't really place anyone where you want to place them just because of injuries. So I think Utah is right where they need to be right now. But like I said, we'll see what happens with Cam Rising and if he comes back. Otherwise, we won't see Utah in the top 25 much longer.
No, like I mentioned, Duke down to 19. Kind of reiterate on what we talked about earlier. I feel that's only 2 spots dropped, so nothing dramatic.
Yeah,
I feel like they're a better team than that, though.
Yeah, we'll see. They got these tough ACC matchups coming up. They got North Carolina. They're going to get their chance to prove themselves once again. So we will see how good they really are. And once again, it comes up to Riley Leonard being able to play. If Riley Leonard's not able to play, going with the second string quarter.
I don't even know who they're.
It's going to be probably a lot tougher. Yeah, it's college football. Nobody knows the backups unless you're a fan of that university. So,
and then cracking off the bottom 5 at 20 is Kentucky, who obviously have a big game coming up. We were talking about sitting tight. Missouri going up 2, Tennessee dropping another spot. LSU, the Big Ten. Love to see that. 24 is Fresno State, still undefeated, and 25 is Louisville. Squeaking into the top there.
So Louisville sneaking in the top. I'm going to say that some of this is biased because they want to make sure that the primetime game with Notre Dame this week looks a little
justify
bit better
the 6:30 slot.
Yeah, because I mean Louisville is 5-0, undefeated. Not saying that they don't deserve the top 25, but Ohio State plays Maryland this week, and Maryland has been impressive. And Maryland is 5-0, not ranked in the top 25.
I made a little note about that on our sheets, and I think they play Ohio State this week.
Yeah,
and now I don't understand how they don't get in, because if they lose to Ohio State by a field goal, you can't put them in there. You can't justify giving a team off of a loss into the top 25. I think they deserve to be in there. But then if they beat Ohio State, where do they go? 12, 13? Depends who wins, who loses. I think that was crazy. That was my biggest shock when looking at the new AP polls.
Yeah, I think Maryland's getting a lot of disrespect right now. And they're not playing games close either. They're winning these games. Like,
they're playing good football.
I mean, it's not like, okay, Maryland squeaked by again and won 24-21. They won this week on a late touchdown. They won this week against a bad team by 14. Like they're going out there and handling business. Little Tua, as we like to call him, even though his name's Talea Tagovailoa.
Maybe Tua.
Talea Tagovailoa, like, is quarterback there. He has really good numbers this season for the most part. I think he has a little bit of struggle with turning over the football, which could be a big thing that's gonna go against them coming to play Ohio State. But even like the disrespect's there in the spread. I mean, I think Ohio State's almost a 20-point favorite. I saw 18.5. So it's just, I don't know what everybody else is seeing from Maryland that we aren't, but I guess we'll see this week. That's going to be another big one. I think 11 a.m. this week is just the slate to watch. I think Maryland versus Ohio State's at 11 a.m. Texas versus Oklahoma is at 11 a.m. I believe there's one more game in there at 11 a.m. We'll preview that on Friday, but it's interesting to see how Maryland stays back. Louisville's been good. They're 5-0. Like if you're 5-0, I guess you're justified to be in the top 25. But I just don't think they've looked as good as Maryland. And I kind of think I hope Notre Dame just goes out and rolls Louisville. I can't handle any more stress in my heart.
I do not need a third straight Saturday of heart attacks.
Yeah, I mean, because I already know it's already going to be that shape for next week against USC because I hate those guys. And, it's I don't need 4 weeks in a row of feeling this for Notre Dame. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that, I didn't let the Bears hurt me on Sunday with that loss that they had because
anybody else, a fan of any other team would have been broken by that loss. But you're just so desensitized and you're like, well, at least Fields threw a couple touchdowns,
that's
almost 300 yards. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, that's literally what it is. It was just kind of like this is life. So, All
right, offense, we're going to start moving the ball today. All right, defense, don't do shit. All right. What do you got for us on the betting slate? How'd you do last week?
So I did awful. I put 11 games out there. You put out one. Of the 11 I took out there, I took down 4. I did get my record to an even 28-28 on the year now. So it was a tough week. There was just a lot of games where it looked early like I would have been covering at USC Colorado. I took USC. USC didn't cover. Syracuse, we were big on Syracuse this week with Clemson, and Syracuse just wasn't that good at moving the football. Their quarterback just held on to the football way too long. There's a lot of times where he could have gotten it out a lot quicker. Just wasn't a great played game by Syracuse at all. Boston College not covering against Virginia. That one, I believe Boston College won the football game, but it just was another game where Boston College fell down early and had to pull themselves back up to get back in the game, so they weren't able to cover the 3.5. We had LSU. We thought LSU was better than Ole Miss. Look what happened.
We're 0-2 on Ole Miss in the past 2 weeks. They're beating teams we don't think, and Ole Miss is just fucking with us right now.
And then the other one that really bothered me, South Carolina. They were competitive a little bit there with Tennessee, but Tennessee ended up pulling away, and South Carolina didn't cover the spread, so that was a little unexpected. The ones that we did get to win, though. Notre Dame, Michigan State, Texas State, got BYU on Friday night over Cincinnati. That was an easy one. And then we had your pick.
Still undefeated.
Yeah. So
I honestly, God, wasn't even watching that game just because of time. And I was checking Bleacher Report like every 3 minutes in commercials. And I was like, holy fuck. And then I was like, they're going to win this game. And I turned it on with like 8 minutes left. And I'm just sitting there like, man, could have went money line. Won't get selfish.
Yeah. But, so West Virginia getting the cover this week. They were plus 13.5. It was the Gerb's underdog pick of the week. And they played good football. I mean, it was never even close to being a game where you were nervous about the spread even. So,
didn't have to be. No, they showed up. They played well.
Good job on you, Chris. We'll see.
What try and keep it going. I hope y'all are hopping on these with me.
Yeah. So honestly, we said we wanted to kind of have a quick show here today just to get something in there, kind of blaze through some of these games just because I got to leave for work in a couple within the hour. So I got to eat here really quickly. But, as always, we saw that we got quite a few viewers watching us live. I think we got to a number that we've been waiting to get to with live viewers today. So it's exciting to see that. As always, comments, we will shout you out, like get involved with the show. We'll, do our best to get you included in it. You got anything else for us, Chris?
I do not. Like Bruno said, hammer the comment section. We appreciate all the love, likes, just viewership in general. Makes it more exciting for us, more fun for us to keep talking and knowing there's people out there. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Find us in any of those three. But other than that, have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you Friday afternoon.
This has been College Football on Tap, brought to you by On Tap Sportsnet. Good night.